Last night, Nick Kyrgios had a very simple question for the tennis fans around the world, asking, are you not entertained? And everyone should be absolutely entertained. I know he's the most polarizing figure in tennis, but love him or hate him, he's one of the most talented players on tour, some of the best hands on tour, and maybe the best serve on tour right now. Just take a look at this footage captured by one of my very many global tennis spies. They're all over getting footage for us in our enjoyment. Take a look. The fake saber, the random tweener, the excellent feel on the backhand, some of the best hands on a two-handed backhand you will ever see from Nick Kyrgios as he rips it up the line. How can you not be entertained? I sure am, Nick. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we talk a little bit about Nick Kyrgios, some Novak Djokovic news out there. We take a look at some of the pertinent statistics on the hard court going into the U.S. Open hard court series. We are well underway, and pretty soon we'll be in Canada, we'll be in Cincinnati, and the U.S. Open will be here before you know it. And some other news from around the tennis world. All that on today's episode of Coffee Break Tennis. We are well underway with the Washington, D.C. ATP 500 tournament, kind of when the hard court series officially starts, although we did have the ATP 250 right here in Atlanta. I was lucky enough to get to go this year and check it out. And already we've got some big names that are going to be playing tonight. Stefanos Tsitsipas will play 7 p.m. East Coast time. Patron saints out there, we may do a podcast tonight if something extraordinary happens in that match. And at the very least, we'll have a podcast for you tomorrow morning before the next matches to talk about tonight's matches. But in today's show, I just want to talk about a little bit of what we saw yesterday and just catch you up. We've been gone a little while. I won't hide it. It's been tough after Wimbledon to get back into the swing, but I think I'm ready to go full speed ahead. Just look at what's going on today. Hurkacz rhymes with Latch, who's actually on our stat sheet pretty high for hard court stats for the last 12 months. He's playing John Isner. That's happening right now. Dropped the first set 6-4, a 1-all in the second set. Riley Opelka and Felix Auger-Aliassime. That is a must-see TV match. That is coming up very soon if Mannarino has finished his tiebreak yet. And Tommy Paul and Tsitsipas. Of course, you will remember Tommy Paul giving Dominic Thiem quite a tough match at the French Open. They play at 7 tonight. Nick Kyrgios comes back to play Gilles Simon, and that is later on tonight on the second court in D.C. But what we have already seen is Nick Kyrgios put on quite a show. You saw on that clip from earlier. And take a look at this clip, just enjoying the crowd. I mean, there's no arguing it. I know so many people get mad when I talk about Kyrgios and say he's terrible for the sport. But he's the biggest draw outside of Nadal and Djokovic and Federer right now in the sport. Take a look at this. This is great. I mean, he's developing his own fan base. I heard, I think it was Jim Courier commentating when I was watching. He said something I thought was pretty interesting. He said, when you go and you see the crowd watching him, it's a younger crowd. He's attracting a new crowd, and that is something tennis definitely needs. Take a look at this. One fan brought this sign, the official Nick Kyrgios trick shot counter. And he was flipping that thing a lot all night long. It was pretty fun. Now, you might say, Matt, this guy, Ty Kwiatkowski, Kyrgios should crush this guy. And you know, maybe you're not wrong because this guy, I heard in the broadcast, never had an official ATP Tour win. But he came out blasting the ball. He was actually hitting, on average, towards the end of the first set. I don't know if Kyrgios eventually caught up with him and passed him, but average first serve speed, Kwiatkowski, this guy was ahead of Kyrgios. He was going all out, super fast. I was amazed. There was one point where Kyrgios said, this guy is lightning. There was another point where Kyrgios, one of the things I love about Kyrgios is he's constantly talking during the match, just saying stuff you never hear, the kind of stuff that the media will ask in the press conference afterwards, and a lot of the players will kind of politely not give you an answer at all. They'll kind of brush it aside, kind of like a politician almost. Kyrgios, total opposite. As you know, I've compared Kyrgios in the past to another certain controversial figure who is known for that, just speaking the mind and saying whatever you want, whenever. I think a lot of people like that about Kyrgios. A lot of people hate that about Kyrgios. Another thing Jim Courier pointed out, sometimes it's good to have a villain. The people that hate Kyrgios, Not bad for the sport because they're still going to want to see what happens. They're going to want to root for their favorite players to beat Kyrgios. All of these things are good for tennis. But another thing I heard Kyrgios say was he went for a second serve. I think he hit like 130 up the tee, second serve ace. And he said to some people in the crowd, he says, I got to. This guy's killing me. I got to go for big serves on first and second. It's my only chance. This guy's playing amazing. Kwiatkowski, he was playing amazing. Big serves, super fast dude. 6'2", which is if you're that height and you got a big serve and you're super fast and a great mover, you're going to have a chance on the tour. I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy start getting some wins and actually make a name for himself on the tour. Go through the draw really quick. We know Kyrgios will play Gilles Simon later today, someone who's kind of similar to Gilles Simon. Maybe he could play if he gets through Yoshihito Nishioka, David Goffin. Kevin Anderson is out. He's pulled out with knee pain. I'm not sure who replaces him. This draw that I just printed out doesn't have that updated yet. But Herbert, Kekmanovic, Manarino, those are guys in there. Oh, Manarino is playing right now. Who's he playing? Okay, so Manarino, I just checked. Some guy named Norbert Gombos was a lucky loser who got to take the spot from Kevin Anderson. So if Kyrgios can get through Simone, possibly David Goffin, he would have to play Herbert, Kekmanovic, or Norbert Gombos. Then he'd have a crack at what looks like Isner, I think, would probably get through her catch with that first set, but who knows? Benoit pairs a seed in there. Jan Linderstruff Struff, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get through somehow. He's been steadily getting better and better for a couple years now and is a threat to anyone now. And Tsitsipas, the person that we're, I'm going to do a dedicated podcast just for our patron saints. By the way, if you're not a patron saint, check us out at patreon.com/Coffee Break Tennis. You can support the show, keep this show going. The more people on there, the more regular I make the show, the more time I'm able to put into it and not have to teach as much tennis lessons for my income. So if you are a patron saint or if you're interested in being one, go there now, and we'll have a podcast just to talk about where Tsitsipas is at. We haven't seen him in a little while, and of course, this is one of the next-gen players to watch. Him and Sasha Zverev, probably the ones people take the most serious. We did see Rublev, Mr. Rubles, Andrei Rublev, the Russian. He beat Dominic Thiem in Hamburg just recently in a very stunning win. He made it all the way to the final, losing to Basilashvili. And in that win over Dominic Thiem, the way he out-hit him, he looked like a guy who could beat anyone. Unfortunately, he lost here. I think a tiebreak in the first and third. We all, Federer fans, know how tiebreaks can work. Even when you're playing great, sometimes tiebreaks can flip the script on you. So that's another player I think we should watch out for in the hard court season. We'll get into that in a second. Let's just go through this draw a little bit more. Maybe a Kyrgios Tsitsipas showdown in the semifinals. That would be awesome here. A very good match for the sport. I know you, me, we're all going to be super interested in that. In the bottom half, we got Cilic, who will face the winner of Opelka and Felix Auger-Aliassime. Again, great matchups. Cilic versus Auger-Aliassime or Opelka. They're playing right now. They're starting, I think. Medvedev and Tiafoe play the winner there. Raonic, De Minaur, who was very good in Atlanta. I got to see him and very impressed by him. He's going for a lot more on his first serve, which I think is great for him. I think they're starting to figure out that with his game, it's good enough to beat a lot of players, but if he's going to get to the very top and beat the very best players, he's going to have to go for more on that serve, and was pretty consistent with it. Kyle Edmund, Tsonga with a big win over Karen Khachanov, who's been hanging out with Nikolai Davydenko. Many of you might not know who that is, but that is a guy who did a great job coexisting with the big three. I think he retired in 2015 or 2014. He was number 3 in the world for a long time. He was always there in the mix, just couldn't really never beat Federer. Actually had a winning head-to-head against Rafa Nadal. So Khachanov may be working. They have been working together. It sounds like Davydenko doesn't know if he can fully commit because it takes a lot of time. He actually had a funny quote, something like, why should I be coached? The coach, it's much more stressful to be a coach. You're always worrying as opposed to being a player. Plus, you have to do everything. Who has to arrange? When do you eat? Get the racket strong, get the new balls, all the stuff, schedule the practices. It's all on the coach. And when you lose, who do you blame? The coach. So Davydenko weighing his options there. But I think that would be, even though he has a very different game than Karen Gattakachim, the Pokemaster, he's a guy that lived in that top 10 for so long. I think he can help Khachanov, who's newly in the top 10, figure out how to coexist with those other big names. But Tsonga took him out. Tsonga, we've been watching him for the last few months, steadily getting better and better. Big first serves, big forehands, and occasionally a very flashy one-handed backhand. almost trick shot, you would say, when you mostly have a two-hander and then you switch over to the one-hander for some specialty shots, some passing shots on the run, stuff like that. Let's get back to Nick Kyrgios, though. Nick Kyrgios said in his presser after beating Kwiatkowski last night that he's revealed he's had mental health issues. We've heard this in the past. Some people maybe think it's just kind of an excuse. A lot of people think the main mental thing with Kyrgios is he's afraid of failure. So by not trying as hard, he can always say, well, if I trained harder and tried harder, then I would have won. I can't win all the time because of the. I've seen people do this before, other players, people I've hit with on the club level. And it's a real thing. Some players, they like to have a built-in excuse for why they failed so they don't feel like they are personally a tennis failure. I guess. I don't know. I have more of the Rafa mentality myself. Just keep going no matter what until you can't move anymore. So Nick Kyrgios' quote was, I haven't been playing too much tennis because I've been going through mental struggles, but I'm super happy with this win. I played well today. I just came through. The same thing for me every single match. Serve big, play big, back with my instincts. That's the way I've been playing my entire career, and we will see how it goes. So, I'm thrilled when Nick Kyrgios, and by the way, I ran into Nick Kyrgios in Atlanta. He's a confusing guy. My personal spy who's in D.C. right now, who will remain anonymous. We protect our international intelligence agents here at Coffee Break Tennis, except for Damien. Everyone knows Damien now. He's like James Bond. Everyone knows 007 Damien, so we can't do anything to protect him. He just got too big, but he still does great work in the field, one of our best field operatives. My field operative in D.C. right now, he said that Nick Kyrgios, he saw him the other day, like kind of pushing these kids away from him, like, I don't want to sign anything or take pictures right now. He bumped into him and tried to say hey, and he was kind of not interested. And then the other day, he runs into him, and Kyrgios runs up to him and gives him a high five. You never know what to expect with Kyrgios, on and off the court. I saw Kyrgios in Atlanta. I walked past him, and I had my earbuds in, and I was listening to music, so I couldn't really hear what Kyrgios said, but I saw him, and I said, what up, mate? And he kind of looked at me and kind of mumbled something. It didn't look very friendly. But, hey, you know what? Guy doesn't want to be bothered when he's trying to walk to and from a restaurant or something. I get it. Another story here, Nick Kyrgios has signed on to, I know you've all seen this New York Open, not the U.S. Open, the one that has empty seats, like 90%, maybe 95% empty seats. It's an ATP 250. It's in February, I believe, February. But Kyrgios has signed on to play there, and this tournament director, Lebvedets, is very excited, and he should be, because this is a guy who actually might get some people to go to that tournament. It's the first time that Kyrgios plays here because he likes New York. He heard positive opinions from other players, and he wants to give himself a chance. He's a great tennis player. His fans love to see him. He makes things happen. He's a bit different with his shot, serve. He's a character. It's positive for us. He's a fan favorite wherever he goes, said the tournament director, Lebvedets. So, again, Nick Kyrgios, good for the sport. These guys probably worried about that tournament getting shut down because no one's going, and now they have some life. They have a chance now. Another one, Novak Djokovic's coach, Goran Ivanisevic. Even he's saying, Nick Kyrgios, good for tennis, as I've been saying for a couple years now. At the 2019 Wimbledon Championships, he was reportedly drinking in a pub until 11 p.m., the night before his grudge match against Rafa. He excelled in that match but lost. Then he had an awkward encounter with a female reporter he recognized from the pub. That was probably the least tense and funny moment of that press conference. It was not very awkward. It was different. We'll say that. Earlier in the summer, he was ejected from the Italian Open after he threw a chair. It was a table! It was a small, collapsible, folding table. This is BusinessInsider.com. Alan Dawson, get your facts straight. God, the tennis media is pathetic. Then he called Novak Djokovic cringeworthy and Nadal made of salt. Salty. Mercilessly trolling these elite players. Okay, again, make a villain. It's fun. One of the coolest things is Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe hating each other in the 80s. That was something that sold tickets. Regardless, Ivanisevic says, Kyrgios is good for tennis because he has the talent to be a world number one level player, and he's a special person. What bothers me about it is that he has the talent to be number one in the world, but he is totally unpredictable. He can play 3 crazy matches and then fall totally flat. I can't imagine his career if he was a bit more serious. A lot of people are asking me this question right now, as in, could you help him? Could you coach him? And I don't know what to say. I do not even know that I could say to him what I would say to him as a coach. Authority seems to be complicated for Nick to handle. In fact, the only solution that seems possible to me is that Nick be coached by Nick. Which, I think that's true. Speaking of Novak Djokovic, let's switch over to Novak Djokovic news. For the Joker faces, you may not like this news. Djokovic fired his fitness trainer, one of his coaching teams. This would be Gebhard Phil Gritsch, who I've spoke of before as the guy you see in the box with the bald, shaved head, who kind of looks like an evil villain from a James Bond film. He's gone, and he's been fired before when Djokovic fired his whole team. And remember what happened after that? Lots of bad stuff. And then eventually he had Agassi get involved, who is not helping Grigor Dimitrov, apparently. Although he did get a win. Grigor got a win in Los Cabos, Mexico yesterday. Phil Gritsch was one of the coaching staff members Djokovic fired in May 2017 when he needed a shock therapy. However, the two reunited a year later when Djokovic decided to return to Phil and longtime coach Marian Vida, who's still there. Don't fret, Joker faces. But this time the split comes as a surprise because due to the fact that the Serb has been playing outstanding tennis. Meanwhile, Djokovic has taken an extensive break following his winning run at Wimbledon. Don't remind me about that. By the way, I've seen so many comments from Joker fans pointing out, oh, Federer hasn't beat Djokovic in so long, or at this tournament or that tournament, and the head-to-head is very lopsided in this decade versus last decade. All I want to say about that is I'm not feeling too bad as a big Federer fan myself because I know the big win is coming. Like, are you very comfortable? Comment below if you're a big Joker fan. After Federer was that close to beating Djokovic at Wimbledon, and of course the courts were playing. Oh, by the way, my spy obtained this from the practice court. Tsitsipas, Kyrgios, having a candid conversation courtside during the match. Take a listen to what they talk about.
You play Newport, did you?
No, bro.
It's bad. The courts are
Terrible.
terrible.
But I mean, it's good if you
So
can
even
serve,
grips.
you know?
Yeah.
Serve. Like Wimbledon was so slow, man. So slow this year. When I played on center court and it was so slow. Rafa I was having like 30 ball rallies with Rafa, you know? Crazy. And like I was hitting the ball like pretty flat.
Are they from 4-1?
Time between points.
I haven't played on court. I played on court one a couple of years ago. This year I thought, even when I played Thompson first round, so slow. And he was making every ball. You know, I don't know why they're trying to slow it down, you know?
There you go. It is very slow grass at Wimbledon. Nick Kyrgios, you heard him saying it. I tried to flatten out the ball against Rafa. We're still having 30-shot rallies. It's so slow. Why is it so slow? I don't know why they're doing this. It sucks. Kyrgios is right. So despite that, the grass being so slow, Federer was this close to beating Djokovic. Joker faces, are you really that comfortable with Roger Federer? Is this a guy you want to see? I don't know who else is going to be super dangerous to Djokovic other than Nick Kyrgios, who's never lost to the guy. Andy Murray, my spy got this too. Take a look at footage of Andy Murray hitting on the practice courts. I'm closer than I thought. Andy Murray is targeting a singles return ahead of the U.S. Open. Closer than I thought, said Andy Murray. The best case scenario, I would probably play singles at Cincinnati. And then if I wasn't able to play in Cincinnati, good chance I would wait until after New York because he doesn't want to come back with best of 5 sets. In terms of moving, feeling, and waking up the next day, I'm feeling good. I could play singles, but to get where I would want to be, I'd have to get back in the gym and get my cardio better. But I have another thing here. Where is it? Hip expert gives verdict on Andy Murray's return. The super hipster hip expert Dr. Genius says Murray's best hope of a meaningful return in singles would be at the Australian Open. He's saying this is not enough time, even though things are going great for Andy Murray and he's optimistic. It's probably not possible to really get back for 12 to 18 months. He says here, Professor Max Fahili, the hipster, consultant, orthopedic surgeon, and clinical director at the Manchester Hip Clinic, it's so hip, said although Murray is ahead of schedule in his recovery, he may not be back for 12 to 18 months. So there you go. 1% of you tennis fans out there who favor Andy Murray as your favorite player. Little hope, little light at the end of the tunnel for you. One more for the Joker faces. Here's some good news, and then we got a couple more things we'll get out of here. Belgrade will get a Novak Djokovic museum. The father of world's best tennis player, Novak Djokovic, has announced the winner of the 16 Grand Slam titles will open a museum in Belgrade. Novak Djokovic Museum will be open in Knez Mihailova Street. We are going to open the museum at the center of the city. There is a huge interest on the part of both local and foreign tourists, particularly Chinese. Novak is highly popular in China, says Mr. Djokovic Sr., who I met one time in Miami. Seemed like a nice guy, although some of you may remember some of his more obnoxious moments cheering against Djokovic's enemies in the player box at some big tournaments throughout tennis history. All right, so this is one thing I really want to talk about today. We got some stats here for the hard court for the last 12 months. Top performers. And no surprise, Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, 1, 2, and 3 on this list. Djokovic has a pretty big lead on hard courts. The win percentage, 89, 87, 84. Federer, going from Djokovic to Rafa to Federer. Set win percentage, Rafa's on top there, 81, 81.3, 78.1. Games won percentage, 61, 59, 58. Points win percentage, 55, 54, 53. You get the idea. Here's one where there's a pretty big gap. Tie-break win percentage. Djokovic is 70, Federer at 61.5, and Nadal 64.3. One thing that stands out to me on this list is Roberto Bautista Agut, who's always going to be pretty good on the hard courts. As Federer said, the hard courts are faster than the grass now, even though the hard courts are slower. And by the way, we hear so much stuff about the courts being slower. It's an excuse, or I'm making it up. I spent a lot of time researching. I'm probably going to do a special video before I leave to do Tennis Masters Clinic with Crunch Time Coaching in Cincinnati. We will be there during the Masters Tournament to do our Masters Clinic. And before I leave there, I'm probably going to put together, I'm going to try to do it before, it might be after, but a pretty comprehensive study I've done of how the courts have changed in the last 10 years and interesting results. One thing I've seen people say is Djokovic loves fast courts, and he does. He's good on fast courts. But Roberto Bautista Agut in particular, I believe this was 2016, Roberto Bautista Agut beats Djokovic on what was the fastest surface we've seen in the last 10 years. There's a thing called CPI, Court Pace Index. It measures how fast courts play. And if you don't understand this stuff at all, basically if you hit a ball 100 miles an hour, when it bounces, the change in the bounce direction, it changes dramatically, the speed of it and the bounce based on the surface. Like clay, for instance, it clumps up and grabs the ball a lot, which creates a lot of topspin and ramps it up and gets it bouncing really high because it grabs the bottom while the top half of the ball is still traveling at a high speed, but the bottom half suddenly stops. That's why it bounces so high in clay. And whereas faster courts, it doesn't grab it as much. They go through the court faster, of course, and they don't bounce as high. Advantage someone like Roberto Bautista Agut, who has such flat ground strokes that even he, as we've seen, Miami this year, one of the faster years we've had at Miami. Federer wins. Roberto Bautista Agut beats Djokovic. 2016, Shanghai, one of the fastest courts. But they break down in categories. 44 and above is considered very fast. Guess what? There are no tournaments where it's 44. There's not even any tournaments at 40, I don't think. Maybe Shanghai is 39 in recent years, I want to say. But in 2016, unfortunate Federer was not playing at that time, it was 44. It's the fastest we've seen anything in 10 years, any surface on the World Tour. Djokovic loses to Roberto Bautista Agut when it's playing very fast. There are some players, Federer is one of them, that Djokovic does not want to face on a super fast conditions. Unfortunately for the Federer fans, not much of that around. So look out for that. That'll probably be a video we do just for the patron saints where we'll really dive deep. And I think it's going to be such a good video and so interesting that we'll probably do it for the patron saints. And then maybe a week or two later, we'll bring it back for everyone else. But patron saints will get that first because we love them. And they keep the show going, of course. So Roberto Bautista Agut, he's on this list at number 9. But one thing I see is interesting is look at his tie-break win percentage. 27% for the last 12 months on hard courts. That is so dramatically lower than everyone else on this list. It's kind of mind-boggling. Other names here, Juan Martín del Potro. It's a shame he's been injured because he's a guy that we're always excited to see on the hard courts. Kevin Anderson's on there, but what you just heard earlier in the show, he's out with knee pain. Sasha Zverev, number 6. Alex de Minaur, who looks very good right now. He's there. Kei Nishikori and Medvedev. But this was interesting. When they just go by points win percentage, Federer fans, you should know. When you win more points to your opponents, you don't always win the match. We know. When you go by that, Djokovic is still on top, but everything shifts dramatically. And new names come in, like Dan Evans, Gael Monfils. Now, for them, I would say, well, Monfils, we all know he has his mental issues. Sometimes he just kind of loses focus. You explain it. No one can explain it. Dirty Dan, I think with him, it's more like he might win more points, but lose more often. Like you see here, he's at 52.6% points won in hard court matches for the last 12 months. That's only 0.9 of 1% away from Roger Federer. Definitely not anywhere near as many wins. He's winning 61%, whereas Federer's winning 84%, 0.9. Call it 85. versus a 61 for Dirty Dan. I think the deal with Dirty Dan, who I got to watch in Atlanta, it was a lot of fun to see him, is that he's playing more like Federer. He has an Eastern grip on the forehand. The stuff he does is riskier and harder to execute. And while he's great and super talented, he's going to do it a lot, but maybe not enough to win the match or to hold up in the big pressure moments. Despite having a pretty good tiebreak number compared to others, Monfils is at 20%, tiebreaks 1, Dirty Dan at 50, Sasha Zverev 50 as well. Anything else interesting in Hubert Hurkacz, who is about to lose. John Isner's serving for the match, 6-4, 5-4, 15-30. Little hope there. Don't think Hurkacz will come back. Hurkacz is number 3, points won percentage. So he jumps ahead of Nadal and Federer. Nadal's at number 4, Federer at number 5, Del Potro at number 2. Sasha Zverev 6. I think that's exactly the same where he is when you just go by win percentage alone. Yes, it is. I gave you my explanation for why I think Monfils is on here and Evans is on here. They win the points, but they don't win the matches as much as the guys when you look at the win percentage top 10. I think for Hurkacz, it's just as simple as he's doing, it's uncharted territory for him. He's in these big places playing these big names for the first time this year, and he's got all the skills and the talent, and I think he's one of the top next-gen guys to watch out for. Maybe in the crucial moments, Monfils kind of goes away mentally. Dirty Dan maybe can't perform at the level he needs to with his harder-to-execute type of game style. Hurkacz just doesn't have the experience. This is something that we pretty much always see go up. Speaking of mental experience, Tanazi Kokinaka scores first win in Los Cabos since 2018. Miami, Roger Federer wins more points, loses in a tiebreaker. What do you know? Kokinaka's beat Jan Vier, this young French guy who's pretty good, actually. So that's interesting. Grigor Dimitrov, we mentioned, he lost first round in Atlanta, which was pretty amazing. I actually had lunch in Atlanta. I was lucky enough to have lunch with a pretty famous tennis player you all would know, I won't name. And I asked him about the courts and how they're playing, and he said in Atlanta, it was kind of frustrating in the locker room for some of the players because the practice courts were quite slow, and then the actual courts you played on were faster. I was actually lucky enough to play on one of the courts, and to me it felt like, pretty normal stuff to me. It felt like a regular hard court was playing pretty fast, but it was bouncing very high, and that was one of the things this player told me. He said they put some kind of cheap tar underneath the courts, I guess to save money or put the courts up faster. I don't know exactly why they did that. But he told me that made it a really high bounce, and it was hard to return some of these big serves because not only are they going pretty fast, much faster than on the practice courts, but they're jumping really high. And Kevin King, this lefty who had never won on the ATP Tour before until he beat Dimitrov in Atlanta, first round, he's a lefty, and it was like watching a vintage Rafa and Roger match where he just kept hitting high, topspin, left-hand forehands to the one-handed Dimitrov backhand, and we saw a lot of mistakes. And not just to mention, one thing I see Sasha Zverev and Dimitrov, no confidence on second serve, especially in crucial moments. Pressure, a lot of double faults will come up when they really need it to get in. And just no confidence in general when you're in a tight moment. If the first serve's not going in and you're not playing with a lead, I see it with Dimitrov and Sasha Zverev, who he just lost recently too. He's not even playing. By the way, my spy obtained some information from a tournament official. Maybe one of the reasons why Sasha Zverev is not playing in Washington, he's losing 500 points. He won last year. He's asking for a lot of guaranteed money. Some of these top names, they get money just for showing up no matter if they win or lose. And the tournament maybe not feeling like he deserves it with all the losing he does. So that's I can't confirm that, but that is the rumor I have heard. But anyways, the thing I see with those guys is in crucial moments, they'll miss easy volleys. They'll miss put-away shots. Dimitrov missed so many. And he was kind of lucky to play Stevie Johnson, who's not having the greatest year either. And he got a little lucky. Stevie Johnson looked a little mentally unstable, smashing his racket Joker style, where you hit the ground like 10 times in a row as hard as you can, just obliterating the racket. Maybe that'll help Dimitrov get it going. Hyun Chung, everyone asks about him. What happened to that guy? Scores first victory in 6 months. We got a lot of players getting their first win in a while. Take a listen to this. This will be, we'll get out of here. This is the last thing we're going to do. 15 months ago, Hyun Chung was ranked inside the top 20. Pumped after winning the Next Gen Masters at the end of 2017 and reaching the semifinals of the Australian Open, where he lost to Roger Federer. After positive vibes in March, quarterfinals at Indian Wells in Miami, the hardworking but injury-prone youngster had to miss the entire clay and grass season almost with a lower leg injury. Still ranked because he had so many points from that semifinal in the top 25, the Korean spent the offseason in Thailand working on physical strength and developing tools to play more aggressively in 2019 and avoid those injuries. Instead of that, back pain hit. Entered only 4 ATP tournaments in the first 2 months, losing early in Pune, Auckland, Melbourne, Rotterdam before deciding to take another break for injury. After many delays, Hyun stayed away from the court for more than 5 months, dropping out of the top 150 for the first time since February 2015. That sucks. How hard to come back from that. Starting all over at a challenger in Chengdu, entering the first event after a long break, he beat this Japanese feller, Kento Takeuchi. Battling on challenger level, he wins 6-3, 6-2 in an hour and 13 minutes. His first win in 6 months. So, best of luck and wishes to Hyun Chung. All right, hit the music. That's all the time I have for you. I had one more thing in here. I had a few more things, but this one I'll just say really quick. Naomi Osaka, I hope Serena Williams is not mad at me. That sounds like a victim of abuse right there. It sounds like some Stockholm syndrome has taken a hold of Naomi Osaka apologizing for her win at US Open. Amazing. Thank you for watching the show. Since I'm going to Cincinnati next week, we'll be traveling. Try to do as many shows as possible. We'll do a lot during this. If you are one of our Patreon Saints, Patreon supporters of this great tennis show, be on the lookout either late tonight or tomorrow morning. I'll go to the Patreon page and update you with a post to let you know when the show is coming. If I have time tonight, I'm going to be training very hard for this Masters Clinic because there's going to be some good players there and I'll get to hit a lot. So I'm getting my game and getting my fitness back up. I'll be working on that tonight, playing late into the night. I have some hitting scheduled after my lessons. But I'll do my best to watch the Tsitsipas match tonight and put some thoughts out there because I'm sure if you're like me, a lot of you are very curious about where Tsitsipas's game is at the moment. Thanks for watching the show. We'll be back the day after tomorrow for a regular show. Patron Saints get a show tonight or tomorrow. See ya!